Call the meeting to order at 6:30. Hi, Teresa.
Hi.
We thank you for all the work you're doing for us and everything, and I'm turning the call to you.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure working with some of you. Certainly, Mark and Greg have been really instrumental in this whole assessment process. I've really appreciated working with both of them. They had everything all ready. They were able to answer all of my questions. And one of the nice things we were able to do is a review of the assessment. So I went through in a high level of detail with them. So the information that I'm going to share with you is an outcome of collaborating with Mark and with Greg. So I'm pretty excited about that. And we'll report out the highlights to you. Just to make sure that we're all on the same page. The HR assessment, the way I describe it is we look at all things HR. And I do throw a little bit of safety in there as well, simply because I am somewhat experienced. I am not an environmental health and safety specialist per se, but I do have that as part of my background, and I do sit on the Vermont Safety and Health Council board, so I've participated with that group of professionals for a number of years now. So when there's an opportunity to look at things that I'm familiar with, I like to provide some feedback with that as well. So the intent here is to really identify, and validate what already is being done very well, to make recommendations on some things that could be tweaked or done differently, and also to point out some areas that could be maybe not reflecting the level of, we'll call it compliance, that we would want to make sure is aligned properly. So one of the things that I always talk with folks about is that this is not ever intended to be a gotcha. So Mark and Greg and I had that conversation, and I had it with a couple of the board members that reached out to me with regard to, hey, what kind of support could we provide from an HR professional to just make sure that, Mark has all the support he needs and Greg has support that he needs in the course of supporting employees and making sure that things are as tidy and flowing as efficiently as possible. And sometimes it's hard to talk about this a little bit, because when we start identifying the gaps, it can make you feel like, oh my gosh, we've done the wrong thing, or we haven't been doing our job. I find in the work that I've done for the past 8 years in my own business, you don't know what you don't know. And if you don't have someone within your company who does take on that responsibility as someone who's gone through extensive, experience or training, you're going to miss things. And the idea here again is to really provide support and guidance, not to say folks are not doing their job. So I want to make sure you hear that from me loud and clear. That's not the intent of the assessment. Again, it's just to validate practices that you do have in place and to point out areas of improvement. So I'm going to give some kind of high level recommendations and observations that I've made. This is all familiar to Greg and to Mark, because we did this in collaboration with one another. Of course, if you have questions, please feel free to, I think probably the easiest thing to do is probably to ask me the questions as we go through, and I will do my best. And Mark, if there's something that I haven't touched on that you think is important, please feel free to jump in. I also want to be very mindful of our time. I know we carved out an hour for this. It may not take an hour, but I've out of respect for, all of what you do as board members, I want to make sure that I stay within that time frame. How does that sound so far?
Sounds excellent. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay.
Thank you.
So I group things into high priorities, medium priorities, and low priorities. And I'm looking at this from the perspective of where could there be some potential low-hanging fruit, meaning this could be easy to tidy up. And also with a high priority, I'm looking at, does there need to be some tidying up, or does there need to be a process here because you could be out of compliance in some way. So a high priority, it means both. So to jump right in, one of the items that I reviewed is called a Form I-9. You might recognize that form as the form that when someone is newly hired or rehired, they fill out this form, and the purpose of the form is to be able to verify that you are eligible to work in the United States and that you are who you say you are. So you have those forms, yay, that's awesome, and they appear to be quite complete. There were a couple of little things that I've asked Greg to look at. He's going to take responsibility for this. You don't have a large number of employees, so we're talking about a few forms. Right now, they are living in your personnel files, and I'm giving you this as an example, not to get too far into the weeds, but to give you an example, there is nothing wrong with having these forms in your personnel files. There's nothing that says you can't have them there. I recommend that they be taken out of a personnel file and put in, for example, a binder, and the front of the binder be active employees and the back of the binder be terminated employees. And it's functional for me because these forms are auditable by Immigration and Control. So if you happen to be an organization or a company that Immigration and Control started, or Department of Labor decided to stop by and say, hey, we want to see your I-9s, I want you to be able to pull them out and say, here they are, take a look. So Greg is working on that if he hasn't already completed this, just pulling them into one file, truing them up, and making sure that you are keeping the terminated I-9 forms only as long as the USCIS requires you to keep them. So pretty simple, pretty low-hanging fruit, got a handle on it, and as we said, we talked about this, and it's felt that Greg can handle this internally. Moving on to your new hire process, you do have a nice new hire process. You have some checklists in place. There might be some things that, you know, as Mark and I are talking, he may want to add to the checklist. I do have a couple of recommendations for the new hire process. I suggested, and I'm getting a little picky here, but I suggested retitling the employment letter to offer letter. And what I mean by picky is that I tend to be trained to be very risk averse. And when I hear employment letter, one of the questions I ask myself is, could that be interpreted as a contract? Now, you're an at-will employer, so I'm going to be looking at how do we maintain the integrity of that at-will status to the best of our ability. This isn't a legal opinion, it's simply my opinion and based on my experience. I would also remove reference to the type of documents to bring for the purposes of verifying employment or eligibility to work in the U.S., as well as verifying my identity. And the reason that I'm recommending you remove those examples is because we're actually not supposed to be giving that level of guidance, and we shouldn't be giving that level of guidance even though our intent is to be helpful, because it could create a discriminatory practice. So how could that happen? Well, some people, if we're saying, hey, bring in a birth certificate, that is one of the items on the list of acceptable documents, and it's a great example, except if we do that over time as an example, what happens when people don't have that document? Are we, without realizing it, discriminating against someone who maybe is eligible to work in the United States, but wasn't born in the United States, thus doesn't have that particular document. So again, detail, nothing bad has happened. I bump into this regularly. It's the intent there is to be helpful, because we do, as employers, get asked, so what am I supposed to bring in for this? So just referring back to the list of acceptable documents is a really solid practice. And the other thing that I would add to my recommendations for your new hire process is, it's my understanding under the Vermont Earned Sick Leave Act, when you hire someone, you literally have to hand them something that says, hey, here's the Vermont Earned Sick Leave Act, and here are your rights under that act. So what many of my clients do is they'll print out 8.5 by 10, the poster, and give it as part of their explanation and new hire process. So again, it's low-hanging fruit, just something to tidy up. And if I start going too fast, you need to tell me, and hopefully I won't put any of you to sleep because I'm doing all this HR talk here. So thanks for bearing with me. We also, you also have personnel files, and believe it or not, there is something that is called a medical file. All that really means, and I don't have an explanation about why we call them medical files, we just do. But what would go in that type of file are employee documents, like anything documenting leave of absence. If you offered short-term disability, for example, you'd want that information to go in that file. If you require a doctor's note for a return to work, you'd want it to go in that file. So there are very specific regulations around the types of documents that cannot go in a personnel file. The nice thing about your personnel files is Greg has them categorized, so all like documents are clipped together, which makes it easy to look through your personnel files. So it's a matter of, having a project where that information is just pulled out, put in a separate file, and also, believe it or not, it needs to be kept in a separate file drawer from where the personnel files are. And the purpose of that is to assure that any personal information or any information that may disclose a medical condition, that it is not easily available to people who do not have a need to know. So you have a very small organization, so sometimes, it's maybe hard to kind of wrap your mind around, well, wait a minute, our two, Greg and Mark would have a need to know all of this information. But I think you have a couple of supervisors, if I'm remembering correctly. And if they ever needed access to the personnel file or certain parts of the personnel file, there is information that they should not have access to because they don't have a need to know. Thus, the medical file helps keep that information separate and protected. It also means that you're taking good care of your supervisors by making sure you have controls in place that don't give them access accidentally to information that they shouldn't have. I'm suggesting that there be an update to your employee information form, and it's a little change. I'm suggesting removing the job information and personal information because it can be found elsewhere. So I wouldn't duplicate it there. So it's both functional, you're putting it in more than one spot, but it's also more practical in terms of, let's make sure that we don't have lots of personal information like date of birth, social security number, those sorts of things in multiple places, because again, you're putting some controls in place for limiting where that information shows up and how frequently. Let's see. And just a review, this project would take a review of what should and shouldn't be in your personnel files so that you can tidy everything up. And I would align it with a checklist so that no matter who is stepping in to back up whoever puts your personnel files together, you have a nice solid list to follow what Greg has put in place. You also have employees complete as part of their application process the Equal Opportunity Employer Form, EOE form. And my understanding is that even though you're under 100 employees, the purpose of that form is to allow you to apply for certain grants that require you to share that information as part of the process for requesting a grant. And those need to be kept separately, along with any kind of interviewing and recruitment documents. So again, it's teasing some of this apart. The good news is that you have these documents. For example, interviewing and recruiting documents, you do have those. All we're saying is that we need to move them to a different location. I did take a look at your personnel policy. It definitely looks very thorough to me. I do have some suggestions that, or some recommendations, suggestions. If you were to update it, I think there are some areas that you would want to look at updating if you weren't prepared to update the entire document. But the end result of updating the entire document, I would like to see it a little more employer friendly. Mark did let me know that, this has been written by an attorney. And again, I'm not giving a legal opinion. I'm giving my opinion based on my experience. We want employees and supervisors to use this document. And it's not that we would want to change the legal intent of the document, but there are ways that we could reorganize it to make it flow a little bit better. So this is an example, and I don't know if this applies 100% to your handbook, but I often will find that end of employment and termination shows up somewhere at the beginning of a handbook or in the middle of a handbook. I'd like to see that at the end of the handbook. The reason for that is we've just spent a lot of time recruiting who we believe to be a good fit for our company or organization. I don't want them reading about termination early on in a handbook. I want to see that at the end. So I generally, when I'm setting up a handbook, will have it follow kind of the progression of an employee process. So, whatever a new employee would want to, we would want them to know at the beginning. I want them to know about their purpose. I want them to see that great welcome letter. I want them to know we're an at-will employer. So those are the sorts of things that I want right up front. I want there to be a compensation section so that everything about overtime and your comp time and, whether it's a regular employee or a temporary employee, seasonal employee, I like all of that under compensation. So again, if your employee is going to go look for something, which we want them to do, and your supervisor who should be using this handbook, I want them to be able to find that information easily and that it's understandable. I did talk with Mark because I did notice that there is some union language in there. You don't have a union, so I'm always a little curious about that. If you don't have a union, I would not recommend that you tie yourself to something that you don't have to do or a process you don't have to follow. There is another way of working with employees that, again, can be more user-friendly, less cumbersome, and allow that interaction and that relationship to be at the forefront. And usually the union language is going to come up around any kind of disciplinary action, those sorts of things. I did notice that it referenced unused comp time would not be paid out. It is my understanding under the Fair Labor Standard Act that it must be paid out. So, when we start looking at some of the detail of the handbook, there are some things that I would want to see you looking at, even if you weren't going to redo your entire handbook. That may not be something you're interested in doing, which is perfectly fine. There are some things, though, that I do think bear worth re-examining just to be sure that it's worded properly. And if it's not, then I think you're going to want to update just that section of the handbook. Make sure your employees know that that has been approved, and here's a new update to that section of the handbook. Let's see. Your harassment policy is going to need to be updated. You already may be aware that the Vermont State Legislature this past, I think it was July, passed an update to harassment, and they redefined the definition of severe and pervasive. And as a result of that, your harassment policy needs to reflect that new definition. And that new definition essentially makes it a bit more challenging for employers because, as an example, a behavior can happen one time and be considered harassment. So again, making sure that your harassment policy is updated and that everyone is trained properly on harassment and sexual harassment. That is something that the state statute for harassment and sexual harassment strongly encourages, which I've heard attorneys say strongly encouraged. You better be doing it. So that means that employees need to be trained. New employees should be trained in sexual harassment, and your supervisors need to be trained at a higher level. And you also must be sure that that training includes it being customized to your particular organization or business. I would also love to see your handbook really highlight your benefits, because you have some really great benefits. I don't think it needs to be a huge amount of information, but right now you have your benefits in there, but some of it is located in different places. And I do find that in handbooks often, that I want employees to really know what their benefits are, because then they are great ambassadors. If they understand the benefits structure and how wonderful they are, then they're great ambassadors, because they can be telling other people, hey, guess what happens at the organization I work at? We have great benefits. Let me tell you about them, along with what a great place it is to work. So now you've got some ambassadors in the community advocating when you have this available and making people aware of a great work. I would reconsider progressive discipline. A lot of companies like progressive discipline. I do believe it can be somewhat limiting. I would not change that unless it went along with training to make sure that folks understood here's how that changes, and here's how we would work with employees. Your sick leave policy, it looks like it references, from what I could tell, the Vermont Earned Sick Leave Law. I would recommend that it specifically state that this time includes your time under the Vermont Earned Sick Leave Law. What we're trying to avoid there is people interpreting your handbook to say, oh, we get X amount of sick leave here. Oh, and under the Vermont Earned Sick Leave Law, I get another bucket of 40 hours if I'm a full-time employee. So I want that to just be clearer to employees that they go together. There isn't another bucket of money or bucket of time sitting out there for them. I would expand your worker-related injuries so that it's more clear what your expectations are. Now, there are different schools of thought. I believe I understand correctly in speaking with the Vermont League of Cities and Towns that they prefer that you don't have a lot of information in there. That's okay. I think that information needs to live someplace. So, for example, I like employees knowing right up front, here's our reporting process, which you do have that in there. I like them knowing that, hey, if you're injured, we work with this particular medical provider, and we want you to go to this occupational health provider, and yes, we're going to direct you, we're going to take care of you and make sure you get the care that you need. I really like seeing information in there, and we have a transitional work program. We expect you to participate with that. All of this information just guides employees so they know right up front, here's what happens if, I'm injured at work. Now, again, this is a recommendation. If you see it differently and you're working with the Vermont League, which I know you are, and they're recommending, hey, what Teresa's telling you is good, but we'd prefer not to see it in your handbook, I would absolutely want to see, and I think they would agree, that you have that policy or those practices.
Oh, Teresa, you're frozen. Oh,
Teresa? Oh.
no, you're muted now.
I'm sorry.
We lost you there for about a minute.
Oh, gosh. Did you hear what I said about expanding work-related injuries?
Yes.
Yep. Yes. It's just after that.
Okay. Good. You didn't miss much. So with work-related, I had mentioned just expanding that or having a document outside of your handbook so that folks at least have some guidance that is more specific. I would add in something about non-work related injuries. And the reason that that's important is if someone is injured outside of work and they come to work and they're...
Oh, she froze again.
We lost you again.
limping, your supervisors need to know to say, hey, Teresa, you're limping, what's going on? Like, oh, I turned my ankle at home, but I'm fine. What you would want to be careful of is if that person aggravates that injury in the course of them doing work, it can easily turn into your workers' comp issue. So the way I explain it to folks is, I'm really sorry that, you hurt your ankle, but we want to make sure that we're doing our best job taking care of you and you get the care and that you recover. And it also may mean, it could have short-term disability implications where there's an application that needs to be completed. So I would want people to be paying attention to that and have a process for that. A question that I had, and this is rhetorical at this point, but I noticed that under resignations, where you have, if there's job abandonment, the way I looked at that, or the way it read to me, is that you would terminate them. And I was curious about that because I'm always looking for people to voluntarily resign. So for me, job abandonment is a voluntary resignation, and I would want them to voluntarily resign because if I'm terminating them, then they may have an easier claim for unemployment versus job abandonment. Typically, when I have been able to demonstrate to unemployment that, no, this person, here's our policy, no call, no show, whatever it might be, for 3 days, or we called, they didn't come back to work, they were no call, no show, we checked in on them, they never came back, they never returned our calls, whatever that process may be for you, I typically have won those claims. So just a little curious about that. And the termination process is really cumbersome. You're not a union environment, and that seemed to me to be like a union process that would be required in a union environment. I think that could be simplified so that you don't have to meet all of those guidelines and time frames, and I would just keep it simple. And there's definitely a way to do that. Then training, safety and sexual harassment training. I'd mentioned sexual harassment training earlier. Updating your policy. You do need to be training folks for sexual harassment. You do provide some OSHA 10 training. You do provide some HAZCOM training. I know there is specific training on the job. In addition to that, I have been able to verify that there are employer-specific requirements that you will need to identify and get people trained under. And you need to keep all of those training documents. Now, I know that Mark definitely, we talked about this, and, you have a lot of training documents, which is also really cool, in employees' files. So one thing that I would see as a high priority would be making sure that a project was undertaken to identify, based on a job safety analysis, I believe is the process, what does OSHA, which OSHA strict standards are we required to meet and required to train our employees to? So examples, just simple examples I can give you. Employees need to have training that they are allowed to report any safety concerns directly to OSHA, or in our state is VOSHA because we have a state approved plan. Working surfaces, if they are working with any kind of machinery, that they can't remove machine guards. If you have any confined spaces, there are employees who are affected employees, and there are employees who are trained to a higher level to actually go into that confined space. But you do need to tell your employees, if you have a confined space, you're an affected employee, you cannot enter that space. So there are things like that, safe lifting is another example that I am guessing you would find in a job safety analysis you would need to train folks to. I'm going to take a breath for a second because I've finished all of the high priorities. Does anybody have any questions, or is there anything that you need clarification on? All right, I'm not seeing anyone raise their hand or anything, so I'm going to move on. We did have one medium priority. You are doing all of your first reports of injuries. That's great. A suggestion that I had to Mark is to provide just more detail in the explanation of the injury. You do have a process for that. Another suggestion, and again, this isn't a high priority, but it is something that you may find helpful, and thankfully you're a really safe workplace. So the good news is you don't have a lot of workers' comp claims from what I understand. Yay, that's awesome. One thing I've been doing with for some of my clients, is I've actually created a binder, and we write a specific standard operating procedure that says, if an employee is injured, here's what you do. Here's how you complete the first report of injury. Here's how it gets reported to the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. One thing that Mark is going to be checking into, just to verify, you currently don't complete a, now the name is escaping me, the OSHA 300 log, sorry. So there are reportables. Those are your injuries that you fill out the employer first report of injury. Some companies are required to complete an OSHA 300 log, which means certain injuries are recorded. And this is for VOSHA and sometimes the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And there is a list of employers with certain NASIC codes that are exempt from completing an OSHA log. Also, if you're, I believe it's under 10 employees, you don't have to complete, but my understanding is you're over 10 employees. So Mark's looking that up just so you can check that box and go, we know we don't need to do this because we looked at our NASIC code, and on this list, we are exempt. So that's kind of a, so low priority, end of employment separation. And again, it's low priority. You already have a process in place. You do have an exit interview. My suggestion, and again, it's just a suggestion, is to document if an employee is offered to complete the exit interview and they choose not to, which sometimes employees choose not to do, then just document that they declined. And also to assure terminated employees. So if you do an involuntary termination, state law requires that employees are paid within 72 hours. If that 72 hours is not within the regular pay period. So again, I'm not suggesting in any way, and Mark and I talked about this, that is an issue for you. You don't have a lot of involuntary terminations. It's just something I would want to be on the radar screen because it's important to comply with. With job descriptions, they're very thorough, and you have them. That is really awesome. I think Mark has done a great job with that. I bump into so many clients that don't have job descriptions or they aren't well thought out. These again are very thorough. That also assists in the workers' comp process. So when I put together that binder, we start with the SOP, and then we have packets that are in a page protector that provides the medical provider with your policy, any of the information they need, the contact information to, for example, Mark and maybe Greg, so that medical billing happens well and employees know exactly what to do. It also includes a job description so that your occupational health or the medical provider knows exactly what the job is. So when they complete the capabilities form, they are able to make really good recommendations on any restrictions that employee may have, which means we are getting people back to work, even if it's part of a day. We want them working, we want them engaged, we want them making sure that they're earning 100% of their wage as much as possible. So your job descriptions are a nice complement to that. Let's see. Leave process, you are required to provide, and Mark, if I misspeak here, help me out. You are required to provide, and it is in your handbook, Vermont parental leave, as well as Vermont family leave. You have always granted leave when an employee has needed to be out, which is very generous. What you should be doing in addition to that is granting their leave if they're eligible for, and the medical situation meets the definition of a serious medical condition under the Vermont family leave, and if the reason for their leave meets the definition under the Vermont parental leave. The reason that's important is employees have up to 12 weeks of job protection. If you are not counting time away from work for eligible employees whose particular situation meets the definition of parental leave or a serious medical condition, and let's say you were able to grant them 2 months off. So you gave them that, but you didn't start that clock ticking for, let's pretend someone had their own serious medical condition. You gave them 2 months off, They now, under the law, have an additional 12 weeks because you didn't start the clock ticking. So for the benefit to the employee, and it does feel a little awkward sometimes to talk about, but it's for job protection. It means, well, you're out for this reason, your job is protected unless for business reasons, your job is going to go away anyway. So you definitely want that clock ticking on the employer side of things because you want to make sure that you're not setting precedents where you're giving time off in addition to this leave, unless that is your intent. Because now you're going to need to treat all employees the same so that you have a consistent practice. So again, I don't want anyone to worry about that. Where there is opportunity here is if someone needs a leave of absence, then you can pick up the phone and call me and say, hey, Teresa, can we develop this process now? I recommend that it be developed when the need arises because it can be a little difficult to navigate through, and having a real example really helps people understand the leave process and what you're putting in place. Sometimes there's confusion around, well, we offer short-term disability benefits. They're getting that. They're all set. Short-term disability is wage replacement. Leave, the Vermont leaves, are job protection. So do they overlap? Yes, but their purposes are completely different. So they need to run concurrently. So hopefully that makes sense. You're all going to be experts in Vermont leaves of absence now.
So isn't there also a Vermont leave of absence that you get so many hours in a time slot that you can say you're on leave, like say your child breaks their leg and needs a surgery and you can take that leave that day and not take any wage or use any of your time off. Pretty sure there's a Vermont leave that is like that, and it's so many hours per.
Family medical.
So that's going to be.
It's FMLA, but it's a different bucket.
So that's going to fall under the Vermont family leave. So the way that's going to work, the first thing we have to determine is the employee eligible for this leave of absence to begin with. So eligibility, and I'm doing this from memory, so we'll just use this as an example. They have to have worked for the organization at least 1 year, and I think it's something like 1,260 hours in that year. So if they work for you for 9 months, they don't qualify for that leave. So then we have to shift gears and go, okay, what's our PTO policy? Well, our PTO policy is you have it, you must use it. We'll give you the time off, but you're not getting job protection because you're not eligible for that. So you're always going to look at your leaves of absence first, answer the question, are they eligible? And then if they are, you need to determine if your employee's injury or the injury of the family member, and there are going to be two pieces for this family member. Under the law, is that family member defined as someone who qualifies your employee for that leave? So you have to look at the list of family members. So if it's a child, I can safely say if your child breaks your leg, you're going to be able to get medical certification that this is a serious medical condition, would be my guess. I would not want to make that determination, and I don't recommend that clients make that determination. Send the medical certification off to whoever their doc is, have them fill it out. Now your doctor or their doctor is saying, here's how much time they're going to need off. Yes, I'm verifying that this is a serious medical condition, and it takes you as the employer off the hook of making that decision and making a medical decision. So those are the two pieces that go with that. And if they aren't eligible for either the parental or the family leave, then I apologize, I can't remember right now, you may have an other leave of absence in your handbook for when they don't qualify for that, for those two leaves. And the only thing I would say, and again, I apologize, this is off the top of my head, I didn't get into that level of detail in my overview with you folks. I did look at it with Mark. We want to make sure that that leave of absence is tight, so that, you know, there are some parameters around how often can they kind of come back to the well and ask for more time, so that, again, you know, you have some concrete things in place that help you make these decisions. Does that answer your question, Carrie?
Yes.
How about family, when they describe family member, they have to be a dependent of the household?
I don't know that the statute actually says dependent of the household. We'd have to go to the actual statute and read that language,
Okay.
which is when I do the flow chart I have a flow chart for clients when I set up their leave of absence. One of the steps in that process is we go to the statute, we read the statute, so again, we can verify that this family member fits the criteria that the law says they must fit. Now, again, you can always be more generous than the law requires. If you are, be purposeful about that, document it, understand you will likely be setting a precedent. Again, not a legal opinion, just my experience.
Right,
You will
yeah.
likely be setting a precedent, so anytime you're more generous, it's got to apply across the board. So
Correct.
just be mindful of that, that's all.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions before we move forward? Okay. New hire orientation, Mark and Greg and others meet with all of the employees. That seems to be solidly in place. There may be an update to the checklist. So for example, one of the things that we want to make sure we add to that checklist is the Vermont Earned Sick Leave Law handout, and the fact that, yep, we checked that box, we reviewed it, so that they understand, here's the law, and by the way, this is included with our sick leave. Performance evaluations, yay, very, very happy to report you actually have evaluations, and the evaluations are completed. That is really awesome. I don't often run into that. Very often, you know, the performance evaluations aren't completed because people are so overwhelmed with their work and they haven't figured out a way to manage through that. That is not the case in your organization, so I'm really happy, you know, to report that back to you folks, and again, probably telling you what you already know. The only recommendation that I have in, you know, Mark and I touched on this, is to be more descriptive, because as I was reading a couple, I really appreciated the recognition that, you know, people are known as knowledgeable, that they're known as a team player, they're really, you know, smart in the way that they do their job. But if I were to poke at that a little bit, I'd be like, okay, knowledgeable, great, what does that mean? And the reason I'm poking at that a little bit is not because I don't think Mark is, you know, doing a good job with this, but because it will help your employees know exactly what you mean with what they're doing well, and conversely, what they need to improve on. So I'm a bit of a nudge about that. That's just me. Again, I think it's really awesome that your evaluations are completed and that Mark is taking the time, and supervisors are taking the time to sit with employees. I would just like to see a bit more definition to it. Okay. Recruitment. We only have a couple more and we will be all set. So a couple of things with recruitment. When I was looking at your application, there were a couple of areas I thought could be improved upon, and Mark has asked that we work together on changing up the application, so we'll be talking about that later. um, removing the dates of education. And the reason we would want to say, how many years attended versus what were the dates is because then we can figure out, okay, what age is this employee? So I'm not, or this candidate, I'm not suggesting that anyone does that, but with best practice and with cases that have gone to court, we're finding that it is much better to keep it as neutral as possible. I would also suggest just clarifying references as professional references, not family members and not people otherwise mentioned on the application. Otherwise, you tend to get applications that, or references rather, that aren't as viable and don't provide as much good information as you possibly can get. And it's already hard to get good information from references. And removing starting salary. So on the employer section, we're no longer allowed as employers to ask what people's salary and benefits were or are. That changed up both on the state and federal level. So they can volunteer that in an interview. We just can't that specifically. And they can tell you, you can ask them what they would like to earn or what their salary range is for the position that they are applying to. We just can't ask them what historically what they have earned. I would add at will language, being honest, on your resume. Some of the things that you have in your job description, I would pull over into the application. I mentioned this before, remove the EOE from the application. It should be filed separately. And any kind of, any information, and again, this is a little bit of a repeat, we're required to keep all documents for interviewing 3 years from the date the position has been filled. And the reason for that is if anyone contests that hiring and says, hey, you should have hired me, I'm the better candidate, then you have all of your documentation right in that file, and you are able to, or you should be able to demonstrate, we hired this person based on these things, we did not discriminate. But you do need to keep all of that together, so pulling it out of the personnel files is going to be important. And also you need to make sure that you're not writing on any of the original documents. So sometimes we'll make notes on an application, and it's okay to do that on the application copy that you're using as part of your interviewing process, but just you would want to keep in mind, and I didn't find this to be an issue as I recall, I'm just mentioning it, anything you write down, if it is reviewed, you want to make sure it's being interpreted well. So we want to refrain from making comments about the candidates that aren't specific to their experience or ability to do the job or focused on the job. And you want to keep all of that together in that file I just referred to. And I encourage, even though Mark explained, hey, we ask the same questions of all of the same candidates. We have our process in place for interviewing and reference questions. I would still have a formal document with those interview questions and with those reference questions on it. And again, the purpose is really simply to make sure that if you have to demonstrate your consistent practices, there's a good step in the right direction. Time and attendance, you have a timesheet for that. It looks like your timesheet works well. That's a positive thing. You're all set with your labor law posters. We talked about that just to make sure that you are getting the updated posters, meaning if the law changes mid-year, which sometimes that happens, that you have a subscription that they send you that new update, because believe it or not, labor law posters are also auditable, and there are fines and penalties for not having the current ones, for not having them filled out with workers' comp, the sexual harassment information, so on and so forth. But Mark is all set with that. So, with 5 minutes left, I think I've covered everything that I hope to cover with you this evening. So I'll open it up for questions or comments.
I think it was a very good presentation.
thank you.
Yeah, yeah,
Very comprehensive.
yeah. And it really covers what we need to cover and what we have got to add and take out and clarify. Most of it's clarification.
I want to thank you for all this, and also, I know you gave this is what we got to do, I believe. If you could highlight, you know, the high priorities, we didn't already, top 5, whatever, or, and get what they are, and come back maybe next month, for 10, 15 minutes, just go over, make sure we got those there that are completed, done. You know?
So, and I think you were breaking up a little bit, so just so I make sure I understand this, you would like me to come back after doing some check-ins and work with Mark and Greg to verify which have been completed? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the things I should mention as well is that the spreadsheet with the more detailed information that I reviewed on all of these items with Greg and with Mark turns into a working document. So absolutely our next step that Mark and I talked about is sitting down and meeting, identifying who's going to do what, whether some of this is going to be handled internally or whether it will be in combination with me, or if there is some, you know, some of these projects you want to outsource so that I'm responsible for it, with some timeline along with that. So that is our intended next step, which I think dovetails with what you just described. But I'm going to check in with Mark. Mark, is that also how you see this unfolding based on what we're being asked to do? There's something else you would...
No, Teresa, as we talked about, one of the ideas is we're going to approach these things and get the low-hanging fruit, per se. And I think just the chairman is interested in seeing our progress from time to time.
Okay.
But I want to make sure we get the high priority stuff too. The low hanging fruit is easy stuff to get, but we got to make sure we get the high priority stuff done. I mean, I just don't want to go say, well, next month comes along, we got this low hanging fruit, but we still got this stuff way up there. Now, get some of the little ones, but you know, of the high priorities, there must be 3 or 4 that are really top that we should be doing. So those there I would like to see tackled.
Okay. So Mark, what you and I can do is let's touch base and schedule a time when we can just kind of revisit now that we've shared all of the information and start well, we've identified them. You and I and Greg know, you know, kind of what our plan was in our head. We'll just revisit that.
Yep.
So we're able to follow through in the way that Larry just described.
Yep.
So, what we probably should do is add this as an agenda item for every meeting to show the progress down the road, that these things are getting done.
Update.
Correct.
So the one thing.
Just a little thing, if it's a little thing or a major thing, at least we're moving in a direction,
Yep.
and it's in the minutes, so someone starts to complain about us, wait a minute, we're in the motion, we're in the movement, we're doing it.
Yep.
Can it go in the manager's report? He could just
Yeah,
put it in his
yeah,
manager's
yeah,
report.
sure.
It's just like-
Teresa has a great little chart where it's a table.
Yeah.
And here's the high priorities, and then the next level will be medium and low. And it calls for who's gonna do what, when's it gonna be complete, something like that. One of the things that I see here is perhaps a daunting process, because I recall doing our most recent personnel policy, and that took a long time. And for, and a lot of these things are policy issues from the board.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be interesting how we.
Well, we had already talked about, there are some parts of the personnel policy that we wanted to change anyways. So I've been expecting that we're gonna see that coming anyways. Because there are some parts of that policy that we had discussed that we wanted to change,
Let me know how I can help you.
so.
Is that something the executive committee does and gets it prepared for the board, or what? A
Last
working
time
group?
we had the attorney work with the staff, and we presented a document to the E-board.
Right,
And then the E-board had their ideas and chimed back, and we refreshed it again. E-board looked at it, thought it was good to bring to the full board,
right,
and the full board approved it.
okay. That seems to be
Something like that?
that should be the
Well, I
road we should
definitely
take.
want to see the section also that, it's not in this report, but I would like to see the section on how to report a grievance redone, because it doesn't work.
That was one of the things that jumped out at me as well. So just to clarify, so what we have accomplished now at the end of this meeting is your HR assessment. So now we'd be stepping into kind of the project work. Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be
Okay.
sure everyone.
I think
was-
that's what I'm hearing, yeah.
Yes, and, we'll have you come back next month and maybe the following month for 5 or 10 minutes, and everything that we complete or get done, you're there, you're going to be our other set of eyes, make sure it's done, and I know it will be, but that's it, and you can give the report, they will be telling you what's done, and then you can say, hey, in March, hey, we have done item 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we took care of this here. If you don't mind doing that.
No, I don't mind doing that, and Mark and I kind of talked about
Yeah.
how we go forward and work together on this, so, sure,
I appreciate that.
no problem, thank you. So Mark, I will just zip off an email to you this evening to get it on my radar screen, and, we'll coordinate and put our heads together at our next meeting. Sound good?
Sounds excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Trish.
everybody.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Yeah, have a nice night.
You too.
That was excellent.
It's a direction.
Okay. Approval of the minutes of 11/1/23.
I don't know if I have this.
Should be in this
Page 7.
page 7, yeah. So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I think I have pages.
Any further discussion? And seeing that I can't see everyone, if no one objects, I'm gonna assume that motion passed. Does anybody object? Speak up, or? Motion passed. Transfer station update.
I have one request. Since I was a regular customer last month.
Yes.
That pothole on the west side of that scale needs to get fixed, and I would like someone to put that in the work order so they can get that fixed. Because that's gonna become a major pothole by the end of the winter. And the boys told me at the scale that that's been there a little while, so we should get a little black top in there and fix that hole before.
West side of the scale.
West side, yep,
Been
as
there
you come
quite a
off
while.
going to the west, yep.
Okay.
It's on the left side.
Awesome.
I figured that'd get fixed,
Thank you.
because I think the Casella trucks are gonna dig that baby up real quick.
And with the asphalt plant closed now,
Yep,
what you do is you get that speedy stuff.
yep, yep,
After
Casella
three-
has some up
after
at the-
3 or 4 days of that, it comes up.
yep. Somehow we need to have a little bit there so they can just throw a shovel on if they have to. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your transfer station report.
I don't really have anything planned to talk about right now. Does anyone have any questions for me or anything?
How's the fence? And the fence issue.
Yeah, we have it temporarily fixed with, we like put stakes in and pull it down a little bit, but other than that, we haven't made any major adjustments to it. I didn't see that there was any other damage around the other portions of the fence, but
And we haven't seen any more occurrences.
not that I know of.
Okay.
But, yeah.
What if anything came up missing?
I haven't seen anything since, that
Any
made me think
any
that
property
was-
damage?
No, yeah, nothing sticking out that would think that someone's been there, so.
Did we fix the items that needed to be repaired up there at the transfer station?
The door that we were gonna fix at HHW, I don't think that's, as far as I know, that hasn't been done yet. Wayne should be doing that this week. And, we also wanted to do some adjustments to the ceiling in the recycling center, which I don't think that's been done because the materials haven't been bought yet, so. But,
Is there a material list prepared?
yeah.
Okay.
Is that it on the transfer station?
It looks like it.
Okay. Oh, for some reason, everything keeps coming in and out. I don't know why. Could be the internet. Okay, thank you. Approval of the 2024 HHW roll-off schedule.
This is the HHW rover schedule that we do in the spring, summer, and fall to towns. This has been revised each year that I've been here, and what we tried to do is try to keep it to something that works for each of the communities, and not to change it too drastically, such that people know they're gonna come in this month or a week or two each time, and that is the way I did it. There's 2 more extra trips this year due to higher volumes that we're seeing from 2 of the towns. So they're gonna be doing 3 times also.
Which towns are those?
I think that's,
Is it Castleton?
no, Castleton's still at 3 already. It was, geez. have that written down somewhere.
Hey, Mark, can you
Yep.
put that up on the screen, the schedule?
Oh, is it Polteny? There's 3 for Polteny.
Only, yeah.
3 for Polteny.
In Brandon, I believe.
For one day, one stop day.
Yeah, let me, share my screen.
Dang that, Brandon.
Yeah, they had a whole bunch of people that came out of the woodwork this last year, and we figured that we'd give them a shot, so we don't have that big rush and fill up the whole truck. Okay.
You see that?
Larry? Oops,
Not yet.
no.
You see that now? Did we lose you, Larry?
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 Muted himself.
Larry, you muted yourself. There you go.
Yeah, I can see it, just want, other people that can see it too. If they're on the computer, that's all you gotta do is go to it and zoom in on it.
Yeah, the towns would like this last month for their annual reports. And those that really needed it, I did say, hey, this is what we have right now, it's not gonna be approved before the board until January. So they're looking for a phone call tomorrow to say, hey, can we really put it in our reports? And, as in all years, if something happens, things do happen, we do have some places where we can make adjustments for, so that would work with each of the towns.
So you need a motion for approval?
Please, thank you.
I should exclude myself because Rutland City has it every day, so I think we should let the other towns move this.
I'll move the motion.
I'll
And
second.
we'll second.
Yeah, I don't have a problem.
There you go.
I think it's good.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this?
This is already on the website? No, this one isn't on the website. I'll be putting this on tomorrow.
You need a motion to approve this.
We just did.
We just
Please.
did it.
Now you need to take the
Okay,
vote.
I can hear. Okay, anybody,
Object.
everybody in favor of this? Anybody that objects? No one objects. Okay, motion passed. Monthly financials.
So I provided a supplemental handout for everybody that has the financial reports. Just a brief overview, the general fund assets are at $1,083,000. Liabilities are at $331,000. It's the net total capital of $751,000. The income statement for the general fund, total revenues right now are at $2,150,000. Total expenses of $1,968,000. So total revenues over expenditures are about $182,000. So that's still on track with where we've been for the last few months. Nothing really particularly stands out as a red flag or out of whack. So the next page is the MRF balance sheet. Total assets of $1.287 million. No liabilities, so that's all basically considered capital. And on the income statement for the MRF, revenues of $71,000 with expenses of $73,000, so it's about a net loss of $2,098. Basically, it's kind of driven by the insurance expense went up a bit this year. And we've also recorded one less month of lease income for the MRF compared to last year. So those two items kind of combined to give us that loss you see there. So that's the financial reports for the general fund and the MRF. And the last page is just the haulers accounts receivable status, that hasn't changed much. You know, most of the haulers are in compliance. The few receivable balances we have are pretty small, other than the known issues we've had with a couple of haulers that still remain outstanding. Total known accounts receivable is about $12,229.48. The estimated receivables, where we've had to use estimates because we haven't received reports, we're at about $29,623 in receivables. And that's all I've prepared for this, other than an update on the cash issue. I've been working on shopping for CDs, money markets, things like that. I've put together a working document basically of all the different financial institutions that I've been reaching out to, the products that they offer, the contingencies that are attached to those products, the rates associated with it. You know, we haven't moved on any of them yet because most of them require an existing relationship with the bank or the institution. So we'll have to go through the process of actually showing up, setting up a checking account of some sort, and just keeping a minimum balance in there, $25, $100, it just depends. And then we can get a CD at, you know, a more favorable rate, or a money market at a more favorable rate. So that's kind of just waiting until we have time for Mark and Brianna to go and sign the documentation to set up those accounts so we can get the money transferred into the CDs or whatever we choose to go with. But it's still in process. I suspect after the rush of the end of the year slows down, we'll be able to move forward with it.
Thank you, Greg.
You're welcome.
Okay, 2024 capital improvement budget and budget.
I can go.
Hey, Mark, tell us.
Yeah, I can go into this with the level of detail, or I could just talk about what we've talked about before, or just go through a higher level. And if there's questions, we can address that on each of the documents. I think a good way of looking at this capital plan is what we did for the table. And of course, each one of these are narratively talked about in detail with some history of how monies have accumulated since I've been here at least. And what this calls for this year's capital improvement is $20,000 for some roll-off containers, $40,000 going into a fund that's going to accumulate enough money for our loader to be replaced. So if you can continue over to the right years, you can see year 2, 3, 4, and eventually we're going to be able to replace this. It does have some miles on it, and it's instead of having it come in one price, we can kind of plan for it over time, which allows a stable revenue and expense lines to happen. The next item would be recycling HHW facility. We're transferring funds over from what we started saving for repairs for the recycling drop-off center, where we have a pole barn, and the poles are taking on a lot of damage from insects, and they look like Swiss cheese. I don't think it's a safety issue, but sometimes these poles will need to be replaced. So thinking ahead, if we can save enough time, like we did with an old excavator and how we turned that into a new truck with a grant, that worked out really well. If we could save some money, put the money that we had in that account into this new facility for a new recycling center / household hazardous waste facility. Something modern, something that has a lot more efficiencies than it has now, something that has running water, which is huge, storage for toilets and perhaps a locker room or an area where staff could change it in case anything happened, showers in case they get contaminated with chemicals. It would be so much safer, so much up to date. Right now, so that's gonna be starting with that money here. And you can see, it's gonna cost a lot of money. It's gonna cost a lot more than $1 million or $2 million to do this in the time that we're looking into year 6. Hopefully we can get some grant money for this too. But this is gonna be part of a process where I'm gonna be meeting with Billy, with the mayor, and trying to come up with a long-term lease agreement and working with the city on grants that, as them being the owner of the property, they can receive the grants, but we can administer to it. We wouldn't be able to get those big grants because we don't own the property. So it calls for some more communications and a long-term plan, maybe a feasibility analysis to open the door for a large grant. What is it going to look like? You know, you take a look at modern transfer stations and how they do recycling. It's not like it is up there. HHW, it could be nice. So that's where that's coming from. The next item is a transfer scale project, which we're gonna have $150,000 going into that. We already have $100,000 already stored up on the truck that we're not gonna purchase. So that would be $150,000 in that line. You can see that at the end, invested. Another thing is to, is just the nature of transfer stations. They have, like the one we have now, underneath it was an old dump. There's no rubber liner that they put on the new one, it's just material. And sometimes, on very rare occasions, you see little things that you don't want to see. So you need to tend to it right away and put material down, put linings down. And right now, we're looking to do some asphalting. And we just talked about some asphalting that needs to be done right away. And when we do take a look at doing a new transfer station scale house, which it calls for, where the transfer station scale house right now is just not modern, it's just not convenient, and it needs a lot of work.
It's not energy efficient
That's for
also.
sure. That's it, no, it isn't. It blocks your visibility, and it's just not practical. So with that said, we build on the opposite side of the scale, and thinking how we're gonna do this in tandem, parallel. One day, we're gonna have the structure built, and then you're gonna switch the lines with the computers, all the electrical go over after hours, hopefully. So it's gonna take a lot of organizing, planning, and to get that thing done so we don't do it while the transfer station's open. So we have $150,000 in that. Oh, no, I'm talking about the asphalt, $30,000 to help with that. And if we have any left over for what we need for the scale, we'll see what happens. As to the diversion grant last year, or last week, we had $25,000 into that. And right now, we had one town that did a project. I haven't received any receipts, nor have we done any payouts. I'm looking to carry that over to next year. So that's not any additional money, it's already money that's in this fund. So the total for this would be $270,000. Move on. Okay, as you get into more of this, it talks about our assets, and some of it's brand new, which is wonderful, and some of it is aging. This is the little recycling drop-off center, sea containers.
On the scale house, question on the scale house, we're not gonna build anything, we're gonna have something, it's gonna be
You
prefab,
have to do something quick. And
so
not
you can
quick,
just
but
drop it on a,
That's the way
Slab.
they are, yeah,
Okay.
exactly. You can get structures the same size.
Oh, yeah, yeah, there's trailers out there you can use, yeah.
It's just, it's just cool. The biggest thing that I'm hearing is, I don't know yet, it's a lot of things that have to get done, is the electrical coordination, the computers, the cameras, and that pole. We already had the electric company come down and take a look in conjunction with the electrician, so I'm hoping to have some ideas well before summertime, or springtime, I should say. And I think it's looking at some options and see which is the most functional for what you do. And we can talk about it. Here's a small, I just dropped that little picture in there to have something. I think this is a little bit smaller than the size that we have right now, but if you organize a place with shelves and cabinets and doors and a desk where the person can sit and take the orders like you do like a bank teller job, it's gonna be so much like what every other scale houses in the state.
Would that be something that might be able to be coordinated with Stafford? By the looks of it?
Excellent idea. But do they do these type of buildings?
They've done houses.
Yeah. A lot of these companies that I'm not saying no.
No, I'm just saying, this looks like a modular setup.
Yeah.
But, you know, it would be a high-vis opportunity for Stafford to be, you know, a partner in it. And just food for thought.
Excellent idea. No, I'm open to any idea that's gonna make it better than what it is. So anything more on capital, I guess? Hearing none, I can go into the budget.
I have a question, kind of on what you led into this with, about changing the recycling household hazardous waste complex to build a modern one.
Yes.
What kind of time frame? Was this just thought about forward vision, or have you some specific time frame ideas? And, you know, like with the discussion with moving the scale house from one side to the other, that's a problem to do that. So how would you do that with regard to what we're talking about with building a new recycling complex? You can't really do it on top of the one you got, can you?
There's three questions I see in there.
Yeah.
How long have I been hearing about the scale, and how long have I been hearing about the idea of a new RDO HHW, even before I started here? And when I went with the previous my predecessor, you know, we toured up there and he says, hey, how come this is happening? And the reason why you put the scale there was too much money. So we took whatever we can get. We had to pay for the whole scale, and that costs big money. So now that we got that requirement for the right scale, the idea of extra money was just not even viable. So that's way back in 2019. Ideas of the new scale, it just, you know, right now, the staffing and just the conditions of it, the insulation, it's something that has been in existence back then, and we're trying to patch it and paint it.
Yeah, I'm not questioning that. What's the time frame for fixing that? Are we gonna do that this year?
If we, we're budgeted within this
Yeah.
plan to have $150,000.
So hopefully this year.
Because the way bidders and construction people are charging these days,
Yeah.
we hope that it's within that.
Yeah.
And we'll find out soon.
Well, so going back one more question to the complex, what's your thoughts on timing of that? And how would you do that? Would you build it at a different location than where you are now, or what's your thoughts on that?
There's a couple of things he has to consider. Number one, the city of Rutland. Number two, water and sewer. We definitely want to bring that in from Gleason Road. So that'll determine exactly where it's going to be on that plot, okay? So that has to sit down with the city engineer and has to be discussed. Once we know that, where the water's going to come in, then you really know where the building's going to be. But the third thing is, we got to make it customer-friendly, one going in and going out one way. You come in, you drop, and you drive out. None of this backing up, turning around, all this stuff that's going on there now. It's got to be simple, easy, and customers are coming in and out.
And to
So how
answer
about-
What I think you're asking on the timeframe is.
Yeah.
That's
Scale
what I'm
house,
here
this budget year.
Yep,
Yes.
we're talking
New
3 years down the
facility,
road.
5, 6 years down the
Yeah,
road.
yeah,
Because if you look here.
Do you
can
agree
see
with
these are
that?
full-
Does the city agree with that?
Oh, yeah, I think we need to, we already talked to the grant administrator, okay, for the city, which is with the RA. She, because of the way it's set up, the city, any grants that come, the municipality has to handle the grant, okay? Apply for it, set it up, maintain it, manage it, close it in, or open it up, close it out, that type of process. I think we gotta get to the mayor and start that process. And then figure out where all the grants out there that we can qualify for, okay? And then start put the package together. And then, once we know what the dollar amount is, then we know what we can build and what we can't build. But we haven't understand what needs to get done.
I agree, but I mean, 2 million plus.
Yeah.
It won't
The
be
water, the
this year or
sewer.
next year.
No, it won't be, no, it won't be.
If for some reason I see more money can go into that, that could be a factor too. But I think right now, we got year one, we took some money from the RDO, and we're here. So let's keep an eye on it as we progress. Let's meet with the city, let's meet with the grantors, and get maybe some kind of drawing or feasibility study on an estimate of cost. And then we have a design, then, hopefully we get the money to pay for this thing to do all this design work for. And I'll put out the big dogs and hope for a good price, just like we're gonna do for all our big projects.
And this is very much in keeping with our recent historical intention of avoiding having to bond.
Right.
And planning ahead, which was
Exactly.
was the case, and we've switched to that mindset. And this forward thinking down the road is exactly what a resilient organization such as ourselves needs to be doing. And I appreciate that that's where this is going, because we need to budget ahead for this, even that $2 million down the road. If we can fund our share of it by saving over the
Sure.
thoughtful savings over the next number of years, that's exactly what we should be doing.
And the grants are gonna come from different pots, so, from federal, state, that type of thing.
There's so many matches that
Right.
come, and matches aren't necessarily always tied to being able to bond for that. You have to have
Right.
the cash on hand to do
Right.
it. So this is exactly what we should be doing. I do see that there's quite a big jump from 24 to 25's contribution to that fund to keep us on track. So I think we should all just keep in mind that as we go down this 5 years, we're very much funneling our saving resources towards this piece. And that is possible because of this nice list that we look at coming up next, of the new box truck, of the new plow truck, of the new excavator, of all of this resilient stuff that lasts for 20 years. We've already, over our work over the last 5, 6, 10 years to get that stuff in place, now allows us to funnel this.
The capital.
The capital to where it needs to be.
It's just smart, it's just smart money handling, it really is, it's just smart to prepare
But
for
the
it.
5-year flow chart
Yep,
makes sense.
sense, yeah.
I got one other question, kind of being a newbie. What's the agreement with the city? Like, it's city land, and so how does the solid waste district, do we have an agreement with the city this long-term?
Yes, we do.
I think with
Where are
99
we in
years.
that? Where are we in that spot?
Well, we have, I think, a few years, 3, 4 more years to go before that expires.
Right.
What we'd like to do is maybe make it, again, newer, with these projects in mind, maybe 50 year. And that adds credibility to any grantor.
We turn in our leasehold improvements.
Yes.
Correct, exactly. And I think most of your funding people will want to see that.
They're gonna see your assets and accounts, your
We
audit
want to see
reports.
stability in the lease, so it's.
That's correct.
If you can kick it out another 25 years,
As much
What was
as
the
you
previous?
Well, I think our goal is to get 50.
30?
25, 30, 30, 25, 30.
I don't remember.
25 years, I recall.
Yeah, and I think we want to shoot for 50.
Yes. We'll just set
just for.
With this
depreciation
much of
schedule.
investment, we need to protect the investment.
Yeah, well,
That we're not gonna get
you
booted out
appreciate
because
a
somebody
$2
came
million
along.
building, That's where you gotta make
It'll
sure
be
you got that.
50 out years out.
That's what the life of a land-based asset is.
Right.
Right, 50 years.
Yes. Yes. And as opposed to what Gabe was talking, is that we're not borrowing. We're not bonding, we're not paying that interest on the bond. We're being,
And that translates to being able to have lower costs to our
Exactly.
public users, which is really what we're here for. And I remember many years ago, we had bonds we were coming off of, which were big and quite cumbersome, and the capital really went to going backwards.
Yeah,
Time.
it's eating it up.
And I'm glad we got past that, but as part of getting past that, we all came to the determination that setting it up to plan ahead rather than putting Band-Aids on the past, which was a reality at the time. There wasn't any way to avoid it, but this has certainly panned out to be a much better process, and we're seeing the rewards of that. Yes, there's still work to be done, and yes, it's not perfect, but man, 10 years ago, the concept of having a brand-new excavator up there was about as realistic as putting recycling on the moon.
Right.
And right now, it's happened. And so it's a testament to that this model works and that this is what we need to stick to and be diligent to. The reason I mentioned that it's funneling over time down to really focused on this piece is that we're really not going to be able to do things like new forklifts and new box trucks and new things like that. We're going to have to forego that and really make sure that the assets that we've amassed, the new forklift, the new truck, the new box truck, that maintenance of that stuff is the priority, because we're not going to be able to replace those until we get this facility, this big capital project complete.
I agree. And there's maintenance agreements on them, so. The new assets.
On the
that we've
forklift and.
The new assets, yeah.
Yeah, and it sounds like the young gentleman who was here before, who accounted for the hours, and some of the team up there appears to be more trained on this new equipment as to how to maintain it and how to do the regular maintenance and stuff, which 10 years ago wasn't a thing on the old Komatsu and stuff like that. It wasn't really.
Trial and error.
Yeah, it was just keeping something that was 100 years old still alive.
That thing still started up and moved.
It's a beauty.
Yeah.
So they've done a good job, but when you can really start from the beginning,
Yep.
it's going to pay off, and that's what's going to keep us on track, is being able to keep this on track. Keep it up.
Any other questions on the budget so far?
No.
Yep.
Okay, moving through the environmental issues, the concerns for commodity prices, and all that stuff. The HHW costs.
I have a question right there. General fund, are these dates accurate?
Well, it shows off a history starting from 2021, and it goes to,
Well, it says this year's budget goals were not initially clear after the November 6, 2021 board meeting. I think these dates are not accurate. I think you need to update these dates.
I haven't changed anything since September on this.
Yeah,
So we missed
I'm
it
just,
back in September.
I tell you, I'm not perfect.
that's fine.
I'll get that year corrected.
You might want to look at all of them, because I think there are a couple of them that didn't make sense to me.
It looks like the graph is correct.
Yes, but
The
the-
narrative
Dates-
below.
dates
Right.
Across the bottom are.
Need to be, we're holdovers from the previous report.
Thank you.
I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me at all.
The top line is okay, but.
Actually, the top one is wrong.
The top
So
one's wrong.
I have
The
a
top one is
question
wrong.
on this. The question is, where do the towns, how does cost to the towns, how is it impacted by the greater cost of recycling? Like, this is, you point out in here that it's out of whack now with regard to low prices for recyclables, and the cost of recycling is going up. And so does that impact the towns? How do we make up for that?
It doesn't impact the towns. In our charter, we have a provision in there where we can do per capita, and we can tax every single person in the town per capita and have that as a revenue source. The district has not done that. And I'm not looking at doing that. Right now, it doesn't cost the towns anything, in any of the towns. The use is paid by,
So how do we make it up then? By increasing our prices here somewhere?
Yes. We're hearing prices raised, and there's gonna be a new price raise by, Casella, 7.5% next month on their fees. So we're gonna have to offset that expense somehow. I wasn't expecting this to happen until July, so there's 6 months of that difference that is not, wasn't perceived.
In addition to the July increases,
Exactly,
Last July.
yes, in addition.
So we are increasing our surcharge by $1.53?
I was told that no surcharge is gonna be changed unless there's a vote of the board.
That's what I thought. I'm just going by this, so this hasn't changed.
This is
Okay,
the-
I'm like,
Plan.
Is there gonna be a need to, though?
A what?
Well,
I expect that your surplus, not surplus, your fund balance is gonna dwindle. So these projects that you wanna do, you're not gonna have the amount that you're planning in the plan, because it's gonna be used to cover bills.
We're gonna find that we're not achieving the budgeted
Right.
targets that we're hoping for.
But then again, maybe we'll have a good revenue year, and we'll see.
And we can always convene and adjust the fees.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
We can track
So
it.
Oh,
we're
yeah.
just not doing it off the bat,
Correct.
we're being
This year.
aware of it, we're being cognitive and forward-thinking, and
This year.
aware of the-
well, we didn't even say this year. We said we could look at it again in like June at the last meeting to see if that was still accurate and if we needed to adjust that fee.
Will we put out each month? As we do?
Yeah.
You know, we keep our finger on the pulse and we could.
Yeah,
Yep.
start to track
and adjust if we
down.
have to.
Yep.
Okay.
So it goes into each, I go, oops, jeez. Sorry about that.
You lose it?
I think you went too fast.
I captured more than one thing here. We talk about how prices are vastly increasing from other entities as opposed to us keeping in tune with their costs. So, just a caveat there, let me just talk about that.
I have a question. Yep, right there. It says add transfer station lead position. You have $80,899.
Yes.
Why are we paying somebody $80,000, or is this a
Salary.
That's everything.
scope of,
There's a salary, there's their health insurance,
but I,
That's the total cost of that employee to the district.
and that's for the family plan. I'm budgeting the family plan, which is 30.
So it's healthcare, match on taxes, federal and state, social security,
Yep, all that,
FICA, and then workers' comp percentage,
all that.
because workers' comp's based on payroll. Okay,
Vision, right?
right, yeah, yeah.
Dentist
It's the same as the city, yeah. We always do growth.
okay. I just want to make sure I'm understanding that is not, I'm like,
That's why
excuse
a lot of
me?
people, that's why a lot of people don't
I want that
understand.
job.
Take home counts.
That's essentially the out-of-pocket to the district.
Exactly, exactly.
And the
Wage and
insurance
benefit.
is 38,000.
Yeah, it is. The insurance went up everywhere, so you're not alone. It hit us too, so.
well over 13% this year.
Yeah, yeah, they're killing us. They're killing us.
But, you know, it goes into details of all the questions that reflect in the numbers just as we're approaching right now. Some perceptions, and, you know, you take a look at one page and you see each and every year, how did we manage from last year? Did the threats get realized? How did it impact it? This helps me, as I reflect on planning for next year.
So I have another question. It says on page 29, I just want to make sure I'm clear on understanding. It says enforcement is 10,000 to audit haulers. Doesn't the state do the audit?
They do their permits, but we do ours for ours.
Okay. And that's what you think it's going to be for that audit?
I think so.
Okay.
If nothing happens.
even those are starting to get expensive. The audits,
On that thing.
yes.
And
Yeah.
We're Rutland City's putting it out to bid this year for the first time in, I don't know, 5 or 6 years.
we share an auditor, the same auditor that works with the state, because they have their state licenses for trucks, and they pay certain percentages on volume, and just like what we do. And they want to track what their volumes are, so this person gets the information from, it kind of dovetails into helping out the state, and the state helps us too. So it's a collaboration. So,
So I also have a question on page 30. You have compost expense is to purchase composters for residents to purchase. We haven't done that in years.
we have that. You see two of them out there right now?
Right, but we're not doing that on a continuous basis.
Yes, we are.
We're buying those every year.
Yeah. But by the time we were able to get a lot of those USDA grants, which helped us with that program.
We continue to bring around the global events.
But we don't bring around the other
Well,
events.
no, would it be beneficial to put them out in the global events? Just a sample of them.
I think with HHW, Rover events, two people are busy, they're very busy when they do HHW. I want them to be able to focus on this. If you had Clean Harbors there, you'd have not just two people, you'd have 6 people, 7 people. But with 2 people, I think they'll be safe.
We've done outreach for these composters in years back.
At the town level.
Yeah, we've done flyers and we've done,
No, we
whatever.
probably should.
So it's,
So
they're out there.
approximately how many are we selling a year? How many are we buying and how many are we selling?
I don't have that off the top of my head.
For the last couple of years, I mean, maybe a few a month, couple a month maybe. Sometimes they're sold through the transfer station, sometimes they're sold through here. It's not a lot since that program ended, but yeah, we move a few of them.
When I first started, we had full place July 1st of 2 years
Right.
ago. There was a lot of being sent. It's not as much as it was then, but it's still, someone came in today for 1, 2. So, it's still deep. And if you can prevent that food waste from going into the trash,
It's definitely something that we need
it's
to
huge.
have
It's huge. Composting is,
as a problem.
if we were to do composting.
I just wonder how many we are actually moving. Like,
It's not a big-
it's not in, right, it has slowed down tremendously.
But it has a nice perception out there in the community. It's available. It's worth continuing.
Is there any other questions on the budget?
I have a very brief tangential one that I don't want to answer, but on grants.
Yep.
In general, do we have the resources or some of our folks here able to sort of dedicate some time to chasing those and exploring new ones? Do we have that sort of a, now obviously not a full-time grant writer, of course. but
Right.
Is there someone who has that?
I could do grants. I've done grants pretty successfully in the past.
There's so many of them out there, and I see some of these lines like under recycling grants, 0. It just, I'm not pushing for that to change, I'm just curious, or do we have a proactive aspect currently?
I have a proactive plan that can get in grants, as I did for these last few big purchases, and I want that to continue. Right now, we don't get the opera money unless the town wants to give us opera money. I haven't heard any one saying, hey, we want it. I haven't heard that. I've heard some people, there's one person that was very helpful, a couple of people were very helpful when they first came out. And, as things develop, towns realize they have more and more needs than they ever imagined. Right. That's the nature of the beast. But going forward with grants right now, there's a lull that are available. Looking to wrap up the USDA grant and see what we're going to do, how we're going to continue that process, because we do have some green some composting equipment left over. So I didn't realize that, that's pretty high on my list coming into this month here. But as for new grants as they come up, I like to think that we're gonna bring these ideas to the board, as I did before. Hey, this is his idea, what's the board's idea? Should I pursue this one? And then I did. I know Brianna is very well in maintaining the grants that we have, getting payments from.
Yeah. I know that a lot of organizations such as ours and others, they tend to trail off on the proactive search for grants and things, and there's an enormous value to that is easily overlooked, and I just want to make sure that we keep our finger on that pulse, because once we drop off and we stop allocating our resources to keeping track and finding those and actually applying for them and taking advantage of them, it's easy to fall away from that and never come back, and we lose a lot of that there. It goes hand in hand with our savings towards future capital projects, and hopefully the staff that we have is adequate to have time to really have an active part of the grant searching.
I think so. Right, as I said, it's kind of a low. I just saw an email today on something from EPA. I didn't get a chance to read it, but I'm always looking for them.
Good. Thank you.
That's
Not to be funny, but if anything was tied to housing, home would be right there in a minute.
composting was a big thing last year.
Yeah.
And he wanted to do a aerated compost system, which the board voted not to because of this, which is fair.
Not every grant is going to fit us, and grants change every year, like you say. And but I'm hoping that I want to put it out there that it's important to me and to my contribution to the board that we be on top of that and that we be proactive in grants and not just passive and let them miss. And I think we should allocate resources to that value.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good idea.
Is there any other questions on the budget? So Mark, what is the total budget?
Total budget is $2,519,505.
Do I have a motion to accept the budget?
So moved.
Do I have a second? And there will be a roll call vote. Do I have a second?
I'll second
Any further discussion on it? So, Greg, could you go through the list for the roll call vote, please?
Yes, sir. Gabe, Brandon,
Yes.
Dave, you seconded it, so. Larry, Ira,
Yes.
Jay Killington,
Is he still here?
I think Jay may have fallen out.
Are you there, Jay?
Oh, Jay must have dropped.
And
Do
Chad,
we still have more?
yeah, we do. Chad, Mount Holly,
Yes.
Ann Pittsfield,
Yes.
Nancy Pittsford,
Yes.
Bill Pittsford,
Yes.
Paul Poltney,
Yes.
Bill Gillen Rutland,
Yes.
Chet West Rutland. Who's Chet?
Jack's up there.
Check.
You're muted, Chad.
That's Chad.
Oh, that's Chad.
Oh, that's Chad. Oh, I'm sorry,
That's
looking
Chad.
at it the wrong way.
Yeah, I think Chad signed up, so. Bruce Wallingford. Bruce is muted. I don't know. Bruce? Oh, Ian's in, he says, in the text. And then Paul said yes. Bruce. So you lost Jay and you lost Chet. So, we have a we still have a quorum, so as long as we got a yes from Bruce, we're fine. That's, you know, it's-
You didn't call me.
I'm sorry, Carrie. Carrie.
I'm like, really?
Carrie Proctor.
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
I
Jeez.
see how it is.
I know, right?
Could be having, he's still on.
Yeah, he's still
It's
there.
still honest.
This is something new.
We're trying to get hold of Bruce. Larry, just so you know what's going on here.
Hey Bruce, Mark Shea here, just curious, you may have technical issues, we're looking for your roll call vote on the budget. Please call me back.
I just added up what we have for yeses so far, and it's 164, which is still a quorum. So you're all set. You will not lose.
Take that.
Also, part of this meeting with the mayor is to get another city representative here so we can get this quorum fixed. That's part of our meeting with him.
Give us some detail on those on the show. I don't know, so, Mr. Chairman, did you hear? Treasurer?
I didn't hear, we had, before,
We do have a quorum with 164 voting yes. So that's unanimous.
so motion will pass.
Yes, sir.
Correct.
I'm correct, with my math. So motion passed.
Do we now need to vote on the MRF too?
The MRF budget is $88,400.
And I so move.
Second.
Council, do
Anybody object?
we need a roll call for that one? No?
Yep,
All right, I'll run through it. Gabe made the motion. Dave Clary.
Yes.
Larry from Ira.
yes,
Jay from Killington. Oh, he's doing telephone, sorry. Chad Mount Holly.
yes,
Ann Pittsfield.
Yes.
Nancy Pittsford.
Yes.
Bill Pittsford.
yes,
Paul Pulteney.
yes,
Carrie Proctor.
Yes.
Bill Rutland.
Yes.
Chet is not with us, and Bruce is still online. We can ask, I guess, Bruce from Wallingford.
He's not, he must be having technical issues.
Yeah.
I just called him.
But you've got the votes for it to pass. even
Same
now.
vote as the last one.
Yep.
Okay.
164 total.
That passed, Mr. Chairman.
So, motion passed. Anything else?
Just on my manager's report real quick, same old stuff about.
Manager report.
Yeah. Same stuff related to haulers, ordinances, audit. Staff changes where we were able to hire a recycle program journalist up at the transfer station, and he started on the 18th. And he's doing his onboard and his orientation. That's it.
So I have a question on the hauler. We talked about a letter. Would it be easier if you wrote the letter and sent it to the attorney to have him okay it instead of continuing to wait?
I could talk with this under executive, under legal action.
Okay. And then the ordinance, I thought we would discuss maybe the board taking some of this on, and especially the board, and doing it and then giving it to the attorney because it's just not moved anywhere. He's had it for a year. So I think that the board needs to look at it, revise what we think, and hand it to the attorney from there instead of paying for him to look at it twice.
There's a lot of technical
That's
stuff up
fine.
there. As you recall, when we first started this up 2 years ago, I was able to get the ordinances, the charters from all the major districts. And ours together, and hopefully we can see what we have, codify what we have into one document, and bring the best practices, the more modern best practices, much more modern than what we have. It should be renewed periodically. And right now, the conversation with the attorneys was that they were going to start looking at this, we codify it, reach out to me for how, make sure we have all the documents such that they, from other districts, and compare, contrast. And to, just like we did the job description, the personnel policy, when we have all the districts' best practices, and bring it to the board and see what their documents look like.
Well, I understand all that, but it's been a year or more. Because it's been sitting on my desk at home
I
in a
agree.
folder
We have that big folder.
forever. So we need to address or we need to send it somewhere else. We need to take some kind of action. It's been a year. And without this, we can't fix number 2. We can't do more enforcement than we are doing without that piece.
I'm 100% on your same page.
So we need to figure out how we're gonna get that piece done. I think we've been patient enough.
My answer is, how can I help? Can I look around for other people that have experience in this type of,
Where's it stuck right now?
It's been at the lawyer for over a year.
So do we just call the lawyer and see why we haven't been doing it?
Yeah,
I mean, it's the first step for you to reach out to the lawyer and say, hey, we need this.
in November's meeting, that was discussed, and I did that the very next day.
And his response was,
I haven't heard anything of that. I know we have to sit down, he suggested we need to sit down.
I mean, that's like number 2 and
Sit
3
down with the
hasn't
executive
addressed
board.
in a long time.
With the attorney.
And
You and the attorney.
Mark, the league must have knows what all the other districts does.
Yep.
Um,
and other districts can tell me this too.
So, contact the league, see what they have. They must have a good template of everything that all the districts and send it to us.
I don't think the league will have that, and I can talk to that level.
They may have something to think of them, because most of them have to go through legal.
There's organizations like SWANA, there's environmental companies that deal with trash, and they handle that too. There's resources out there that specialize in this thing. And that's all I do. So, let me see what I can pull up for ideas, I'll bring it back for next month, and we'll have more information.
That would be good.
I
I think we need to, like, act on this.
I'll
Do you want somebody else to
Well,
call a lawyer?
I'll call.
Okay.
I know Larry's been talking with the lawyer,
Okay.
and we did make some ideas on the 2 items. That's been transferred to someone else.
Okay.
So I haven't heard beyond that. I can call again. And have a much more follow-up very soon.
You know, it'd be also nice, I think, is have another district manager, if he, tune in on our meeting, just go over what their ordinances and how they do it. We can ask them questions. You can too. You're in with them all the time anyways, Mark. You meet with them every 2 weeks?
Yeah, at least once a month.
Or something like that. So, compare our ordinance to their.
It
What
sounds
do
like
you do
you
when you
compiled
sit-
a lot of that information already, and that legwork is.
That's
largely
already
complete.
compiled in the ordinances that I have, and it's on their website too. It's already compiled, and some are very different than we have, some are very similar, but move on all those things that we've talked about, that we need to see these improvements.
Okay, get the information where you can. Is there anything else under the manager report?
I mean, even if we just do one section, and we look at one section.
I know.
Yes.
I'll take any approach as long as something's happening. If we're not doing something, somehow I feel like, what am I doing? What are we doing? And it's been an issue for,
Just keep kicking the process.
before I started. People
Well,
brought it to me.
It's been on my desk a long time.
No, I'll do some research.
We will take care of it.
Yes.
Is there anybody here from the public?
There is one person I see from the public.
It's silent.
In the video.
Yeah.
In the video.
We have any questions? Any comments? I take it that's a no.
Haven't heard anything.
Who's moving?
Okay,
Who's making the motion?
welcome to my world. I'm just gonna guess.
There's no hesitation with that.
Oh. Mark, did you get that? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to
I make a
adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
Somebody did.
Second.
Second.